What if I told you that every atom in your body, every particle that makes up the device you're holding, every molecule of oxygen flowing through your lungs right now shouldn't exist at all? According to everything we understand about physics, we should be living in a universe of pure, empty energy, where matter never had the chance to form, where complexity never emerged, where you and I would never have come to be. Yet here we are, breathing, thinking, existing in defiance of what seems impossible. Tonight, we're going to uncover one of the most mind-bending mysteries in all of science. How did atoms, these invisible architects of everything around us, emerge from what appears to be absolute nothingness? Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like heavy theoretical physics, the kind of stuff that makes your eyes glaze over in textbooks. But here's the thing that will absolutely blow your mind. This isn't just some abstract scientific puzzle. This is your story. Every carbon atom that forms the backbone of your DNA, every iron atom coursing through your bloodstream, every calcium atom strengthening your bones, they all have an origin tale so extraordinary, so unlikely, that the mere fact you're conscious and pondering this right now borders on miraculous. If you find these gentle explorations into the deepest mysteries of existence comforting, I'd be genuinely grateful if you'd consider subscribing. The visuals are here for you, but feel free to close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let your imagination drift through these cosmic possibilities. Also, I'd love to know where you're contemplating from tonight. Drop your location in the comments below. Let's begin this impossible journey. Before we venture into the cosmic deep end, let me paint you a picture of just how incredible this story becomes. In the beginning, there was nothing. Not just empty space, but literally nothing. No atoms, no particles, no building blocks of any kind. The universe was pure energy, so violent and chaotic that anything resembling matter couldn't hold together for even the briefest instant before being torn apart by the cosmic fury surrounding it. Yet within the first few minutes of existence, through a series of events that required timing so precise it makes a Swiss watch look sloppy, the first atomic building blocks began to emerge from this chaos. We're talking about hydrogen and helium, the simplest possible atoms. But even these required conditions so specific, so perfectly calibrated, that they could only exist within a narrow window of cosmic time. Too early, and the universe was too hot for anything to stick together. Too late, and the expanding cosmos would cool beyond the point where nuclear fusion could occur. Think about that for a moment. The window for creating the first atoms lasted mere minutes, in a universe that would go on to exist for nearly 14 billion years. It's like having exactly 3 seconds to thread a needle while riding a roller coaster during an earthquake. And that's just the beginning. Here's where this story gets really wild. The atoms that would eventually form you didn't just appear once and stay put. They've been on an incredible journey, recycling through the cosmos for billions upon billions of years. The carbon in your cells was forged in the core of a dying star that exploded long before our solar system even existed. The oxygen you're breathing has been part of countless other molecules, other organisms, other worlds across deep time. You are literally made of recycled stardust that has been on an epic voyage through space and time. But the universe wasn't just randomly throwing particles together and hoping for the best. It had to solve a series of interconnected puzzles so complex, so perfectly orchestrated, that if any single piece had been even slightly different, atoms would never have formed at all. Let me give you just a taste of how precise these cosmic coincidences had to be. The electromagnetic force, one of the 4 fundamental forces governing everything in existence, had to be calibrated with extraordinary precision. If it was slightly stronger, electrons would spiral into atomic nuclei and crash into protons, making stable atoms impossible. If it was slightly weaker, electrons would orbit so far from the nucleus, they'd barely be considered part of the atom at all. But it gets even more mind-bending. This force didn't just need to be the right strength in isolation, it had to maintain exactly the right relationship with the other fundamental forces. The strong nuclear force had to be powerful enough to overcome electromagnetic repulsion between protons, but not so powerful that hydrogen, the most abundant and essential atom, couldn't exist. We're talking about a cosmic balancing act so delicate that changing any of these fundamental constants by even a few percent would result in a universe where chemistry as we know it simply couldn't exist. Stars wouldn't be able to forge heavy elements. Planets couldn't form. Life would be utterly impossible. Now here's the part that should make your head spin. During those first crucial moments after the Big Bang, the universe wasn't just hot beyond imagination. We're talking temperatures over 1 trillion degrees. To put that in perspective, the core of our sun reaches about 15 million degrees, and that's hot enough to fuse hydrogen into helium through nuclear fusion. But in those earliest moments, the cosmic temperature was so extreme that even the fundamental particles that would eventually become atoms couldn't maintain their individual identities. Imagine a cosmic soup where energy and matter were completely interchangeable, where particles popped into existence only to be instantly destroyed by collisions with other particles moving at nearly the speed of light. This wasn't just hot, it was violently chaotic. Every cubic centimeter of space contained more energy than exists in entire galaxies today. The universe was essentially a bubbling cauldron of pure possibility where the normal rules of chemistry and physics were suspended in favor of something far more primal and savage. Yet, even in this cosmic chaos, the seeds of order were already being planted. As the universe expanded and began to cool, different types of particles started to emerge from this energy-rich environment. First came quarks, those fundamental building blocks that would eventually combine to form protons and neutrons. But here's the thing, in these early moments, quarks couldn't stick together. The temperature was still too high, the environment too violent for any stable structures to form. Think of it like trying to build a delicate house of cards during a hurricane while someone keeps throwing dynamite at your construction site. Every time particles tried to bond together, the intense heat and constant collisions would tear them apart almost instantly. The universe was essentially at war with itself, with the forces of creation and destruction locked in a cosmic battle that would determine whether matter could ever exist at all. This was the ultimate test. Would chaos reign supreme? Or could order somehow emerge from this primordial violence? As the expansion continued and temperatures began to drop, something remarkable started to happen. The quarks began to find each other and stick together, forming the first protons and neutrons. This process, called confinement, was like the universe suddenly discovering how to make its first stable building blocks. But even these protons and neutrons weren't safe yet. The environment was still far too hostile for anything resembling a complete atom to form. Here's where the story takes a dramatic turn that reveals just how patient the universe had to learn to be. For atoms to truly exist, the universe needed to solve a fundamental problem that seems almost impossible to overcome. When a proton and electron try to come together to form a hydrogen atom, they need to exist in a relatively calm environment where they won't be immediately torn apart by high-energy collisions. But the early universe was anything but calm. The solution came through one of the most elegant processes in cosmic history. As the universe continued to expand, it was essentially diluting its own energy. Imagine taking a drop of incredibly concentrated heat and spreading it across an ever-increasing volume of space. The temperature had to drop to just the right level where atomic nuclei could form. but not so low that the nuclear processes would stop working entirely. This brings us to one of the most crucial windows in cosmic history, what scientists call Big Bang nucleosynthesis. And it lasted for only about 20 minutes. 20 minutes out of nearly 14 billion years of cosmic evolution. Yet during this brief window, the universe accomplished something extraordinary. It created the first atomic nuclei. But here's the catch. The universe couldn't make anything heavier than lithium during this period. The conditions weren't right for forming carbon, oxygen, iron, or any of the other elements that would eventually become essential for planets and life. So at the end of this cosmic cooking session, the universe had successfully created its first atomic nuclei. But they were still naked nuclei, stripped of electrons and unable to form complete atoms. The environment was still far too hot and energetic for electrons to settle into stable orbits around these nuclei. What the universe had accomplished was creating the raw materials for atoms, but not atoms themselves. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in understanding how atoms formed from nothing. The universe had to learn patience. After that initial burst of nucleosynthesis, cosmic evolution entered a much slower phase. The newly formed nuclei had to wait, suspended in a sea of high-energy radiation and free electrons, for conditions to become just right for complete atom formation. But there was another challenge the universe faced during this time, one that nearly prevented atoms from existing at all. According to our understanding of physics, the Big Bang should have created equal amounts of matter and antimatter. And when matter meets antimatter, they annihilate each other completely, converting back into pure energy. If the universe had created exactly equal amounts of matter and antimatter, everything would have been destroyed, leaving behind nothing but photons of light racing through empty space. No atoms, no stars, no planets, no life. The fact that we exist at all means that somehow, for reasons we still don't fully understand, there was a tiny imbalance in favor of matter over antimatter. We're talking about an incredibly small difference. For every billion antimatter particles, there were about 1,000,000,001 matter particles. That single extra particle of matter, multiplied across the entire universe, became everything we see today. Every atom in your body, every star in the sky, every galaxy stretching across billions of light years. All of it comes from that minuscule cosmic asymmetry. You are literally made from the survivors of the greatest catastrophe in the history of reality. As we stand at this point in our cosmic story, with naked atomic nuclei waiting patiently in a universe still too hot for complete atoms to form, we're about to witness one of the most dramatic transformations in cosmic history. But first, the universe would have to endure what cosmologists call the Dark Ages, a period when atoms would exist, but the cosmos had not yet learned how to make them shine. The stage was set for the next chapter in atomic evolution, but the universe still had several major obstacles to overcome before the matter we're made of could truly flourish. The universe was about to enter what cosmologists call the Dark Ages, and the name is brutally accurate. For hundreds of thousands of years, the cosmos would remain shrouded in an impenetrable fog, a cosmic blindness that prevented light from traveling freely through space. But this darkness wasn't empty. It was pregnant with potential, filled with atomic nuclei desperately waiting for their chance to become complete atoms. Picture the universe at this stage as a vast ocean of glowing plasma, where atomic nuclei and electrons existed separately, unable to come together because the ambient temperature was still too high. Every time an electron tried to settle into orbit around a nucleus, high-energy photons would smack into it and knock it loose again. It was like trying to build a delicate house of cards during an earthquake, where every attempt at construction was immediately demolished by the chaotic environment. This cosmic fog was opaque because photons, the particles of light, couldn't travel very far without bumping into a free electron. Imagine trying to see through a thick blanket of steam, except this steam filled the entire observable universe. Light would travel maybe a few thousand miles before getting scattered in a random direction, making the cosmos effectively invisible to itself. But the universe was expanding, and with that expansion came cooling. Temperature was dropping steadily, and the cosmic plasma was gradually losing its violent energy. The universe was approaching a critical threshold, a moment when electrons would finally have enough stability to be captured by atomic nuclei and remain in stable orbits. When that moment arrived, it would be one of the most dramatic transitions in cosmic history. Scientists call it recombination, though that's actually a misleading name because electrons and nuclei weren't recombining. They were combining for the very first time in the universe's existence. This was the birth of the first complete atoms, the moment when naked nuclei finally clothed themselves with electron clouds. The process began when the cosmic temperature dropped to about 3,000 degrees Kelvin. Now, that might still sound incredibly hot, and it is by Earth's standards, but remember, we're comparing this to conditions that were once trillions of degrees. At 3,000 degrees, something magical became possible. Electrons could finally settle into the lowest energy orbit around hydrogen nuclei without being immediately kicked out by ambient radiation. When this happened, the change was swift and dramatic. Within a relatively short cosmic time span, roughly 100,000 years, most of the free electrons in the universe were captured by atomic nuclei. Hydrogen atoms formed in vast quantities, along with helium atoms and trace amounts of lithium atoms. For the first time in cosmic history, the universe was filled with complete, stable atoms rather than just naked nuclei and free electrons. But the real miracle wasn't just that atoms formed. The miracle was what happened to light itself. With most of the free electrons now bound up in atoms, photons could suddenly travel freely through space without constantly being scattered. The cosmic fog lifted, and the universe became transparent for the first time since the Big Bang. This moment, occurring roughly 400,000 years after the universe began, represents one of the most profound transitions in cosmic evolution. The light that was released during recombination is still traveling through the universe today. We can detect it as the cosmic microwave background radiation, a faint whisper of heat that permeates all of space. It's like a baby photo of the universe, showing us what the cosmos looked like when atoms first formed. Think about the significance of this moment. Every atom that would eventually become part of a star, a planet, or a living being was born during this cosmic transition. The hydrogen atom that might one day become part of a water molecule in your cells was created during recombination. The helium atom that could eventually find its way into a balloon at a child's birthday party formed during this same cosmic epoch. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. The atoms that formed during recombination were still incredibly simple. We're talking about hydrogen, helium, and tiny amounts of lithium. These are the simplest possible atoms, with just 1, 2, or 3 protons in their nuclei. The universe had successfully learned how to make atomic building blocks, but it hadn't yet figured out how to make the complex atoms that would be necessary for chemistry, for planets, for life. To create heavier elements, the universe would need to build cosmic furnaces far more powerful than anything that existed during the Big Bang. It would need to create stars, massive balls of gas that could generate the extreme temperatures and pressures necessary to fuse light atoms into heavier ones. But stars couldn't form until atoms existed to provide the raw material. This creates one of the most beautiful feedback loops in cosmic evolution. Atoms were necessary for stars to form, but stars were necessary for complex atoms to be created. The universe had to solve both problems simultaneously, using the simple atoms created during recombination as the foundation for building stellar nurseries, where atomic complexity could flourish. The process began with gravity, that patient architect of cosmic structure. Even though the universe was now filled with atoms rather than plasma, it wasn't perfectly uniform. There were slight variations in density, tiny ripples left over from quantum fluctuations in the very early universe. These ripples became the seeds around which matter would begin to accumulate. Gravity works slowly but relentlessly. Regions that were even slightly denser than average began to attract nearby atoms, growing more massive over time. As they grew, their gravitational pull became stronger, allowing them to attract atoms from increasingly greater distances. What started as tiny variations in atomic density gradually became larger and larger concentrations of matter. This process took millions of years to unfold. Slowly, patiently, gravity gathered hydrogen and helium atoms into vast clouds that spanned hundreds of light years. These primordial gas clouds were the cosmic construction sites where the first stars would eventually ignite. But even forming these clouds required a delicate balance of conditions. The atoms had to be cool enough to clump together under gravity's influence, but not so cold that they would freeze into solid particles. They needed to maintain just enough thermal motion to remain gaseous, while still allowing gravitational attraction to pull them into increasingly dense concentrations. The universe was walking a tightrope between order and chaos, structure and dispersal. As these gas clouds grew more massive, something remarkable began to happen at their centers. The accumulating atoms were being compressed by the weight of all the material above them. Compression leads to heating, and heating leads to increased pressure. Deep within these cosmic nurseries, conditions were slowly approaching the extreme temperatures and densities that would be necessary for nuclear fusion to restart. But this wasn't the same kind of fusion that had occurred during Big Bang nucleosynthesis. That early fusion had been driven by the ambient temperature of the entire universe. What was happening inside these gas clouds was gravitational compression. The universe learning how to create local hotspots where nuclear reactions could occur, even as the overall cosmic temperature continued to drop. The first stars that formed from this process were unlike any stars we see today. They were massive, perhaps 100 times more massive than our sun, and they burned with incredible intensity. These stellar giants lived fast and died young, but during their brief lifetimes, they accomplished something extraordinary. They became the universe's first heavy element factories. Inside their cores, temperatures reached hundreds of millions of degrees, hot enough to fuse hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon, carbon into oxygen, and so on up the periodic table. For the first time since the Big Bang, the universe was creating new types of atomic nuclei, building the chemical diversity that would eventually make complex chemistry possible. These first stars were cosmic alchemists, transforming simple atoms into complex ones through nuclear fusion. Carbon atoms formed when 3 helium nuclei collided simultaneously in a process so unlikely it seems almost impossible. Oxygen formed when carbon nuclei captured additional helium nuclei. Neon, magnesium, silicon, sulfur and iron all emerged from the stellar furnaces through carefully orchestrated nuclear reactions. Each step in this process required precise conditions and perfect timing. The star had to maintain exactly the right core temperature for each type of fusion reaction to occur. It had to balance the outward pressure from nuclear fusion against the inward pull of its own gravity. It had to burn its nuclear fuel at just the right rate to avoid either exploding prematurely or collapsing before the fusion process was complete. The universe was learning through trial and error across billions of stellar experiments how to cook up the entire periodic table of elements. Each star that formed was like a cosmic laboratory, testing different combinations of mass, temperature, and pressure to see what kinds of atoms could be created. Most of these early stars ended their lives in spectacular supernova explosions, scattering their newly minted atoms across vast regions of space. These stellar explosions were crucial for atomic evolution because they solved a fundamental distribution problem. Heavy elements created in stellar cores would normally remain trapped inside stars forever. But supernovae are so violent that they can overcome the star's gravitational pull and blast newly formed atoms into interstellar space, where they become available for building the next generation of stars and planets. With each stellar generation, the universe became more chemically diverse. Gas clouds that collapsed to form new stars now contain not just hydrogen and helium, but trace amounts of carbon, oxygen, silicon, and iron. This chemical enrichment meant that subsequent generations of stars could form with solid particles mixed in with the gas, creating the raw materials for planet formation. But the story doesn't end with stellar nucleosynthesis. The universe still needed to learn how to make the very heaviest atoms, elements like gold, platinum, and uranium that require even more extreme conditions than stellar cores can provide. These elements would be forged in some of the most violent events in cosmic history, collisions between neutron stars and other exotic stellar remnants. The formation of atoms from nothing was not a single event, but an ongoing process of cosmic learning and experimentation. Each phase of atomic evolution built upon the previous phase, creating new possibilities that hadn't existed before. Simple atoms enabled star formation. Stars enabled heavy element creation. Heavy elements enabled planet formation, and planets would eventually enable the chemistry necessary for life. What we're witnessing is the universe gradually discovering its own creative potential, learning through billions of years of experimentation how to transform pure energy into the complex atomic structures that make consciousness possible. The atoms in your body are the end result of this cosmic educational process, each one carrying within it the entire history of atomic evolution from the Big Bang to the present moment. But there's something even more remarkable about this cosmic recycling program that should leave you absolutely stunned. The atoms that eventually found their way into your body didn't just passively drift through space, waiting patiently to become part of something interesting. They actively participated in shaping the very environments that would make complex structures like you possible. Consider the iron atom that's currently flowing through your bloodstream, carrying oxygen to every cell in your body. Before it became part of you, that iron atom had an adventure that spans billions of years and countless cosmic events. It was forged in the heart of a massive star, under conditions so extreme they defy human comprehension. We're talking about temperatures exceeding 3 billion degrees and pressures that would compress a mountain into the size of a marble. When that ancient star reached the end of its life, it didn't fade away quietly like smaller stars do. Instead, it detonated in one of the most violent explosions the universe can produce, a supernova that briefly outshone an entire galaxy containing hundreds of billions of other stars. During that explosive moment, your iron atom was hurled into space at speeds of thousands of miles per second, riding shock waves that stretched across light years of interstellar space. But here's where the story becomes almost too incredible to believe. That iron atom didn't just randomly bounce around space until it happened to end up in your body. It participated in an intricate dance of cosmic recycling that gradually enriched the universe with the chemical diversity necessary for planets like Earth to form. Your iron atom spent millions of years drifting through the cosmic void, part of an expanding cloud of stellar debris that gradually mixed with the thin gas floating between stars. Eventually, gravity began pulling this enriched material back together, forming new clouds that would collapse to create the next generation of stars. But this time, the process was fundamentally different. These newer star-forming regions contain not just the hydrogen and helium that dominated the early universe, but trace amounts of all the heavier elements that previous stellar generations had created through their nuclear alchemy. This chemical diversity meant that when planets began forming around these newer stars, they could be made of rock and metal rather than just gas. Your iron atom was about to become part of something unprecedented in cosmic history, a solid world capable of supporting complex chemistry. The process of planet formation itself represents another remarkable chapter in atomic evolution, one where individual atoms learn to stick together in entirely new ways. As our young sun began to shine, it was surrounded by a swirling disk of gas and dust. Within this disk, atoms began organizing themselves according to patterns they had never explored before. Your iron atom collided with other metal atoms, forming tiny grains of solid material no bigger than specks of dust. These dust grains then began the slow process of accretion, sticking together whenever they happened to collide. Over millions of years, dust became pebbles, pebbles became boulders, boulders became asteroids, and asteroids eventually became planets. Your iron atom was swept up in this cosmic construction project, becoming part of the molten Earth that formed about 4.5 billion years ago. But even becoming part of a planet wasn't the end of its journey. The early Earth was a hellish world of volcanic activity, asteroid impacts, and atmospheric chaos. Your iron atom was recycled through this planetary crucible countless times, sometimes part of molten rock deep underground, sometimes part of atmospheric gases, sometimes dissolved in the primitive oceans that began forming as the planet cooled. Here's where the story takes another incredible turn. Those early oceans became cosmic laboratories where atoms learned to do something completely revolutionary. They began forming complex molecules, intricate structures that were far more elaborate than anything that had existed in the sterile vacuum of space. Carbon atoms, which had been created in stellar cores just like your iron atom, discovered they could link together in long chains and complex rings. These carbon-based molecules became the foundation for chemistry as we know it. Amino acids formed, then proteins, then primitive cell membranes. The atoms that had been forged in stellar furnaces were now participating in the emergence of life itself. Think about what this means. The same nuclear processes that created your iron atom in a stellar core also created the carbon that forms the backbone of every protein in your body, the oxygen that you breathe, the calcium that strengthens your bones. These atoms didn't just accidentally find themselves in the same place at the same time. They were brought together through a cosmic symphony of stellar evolution, planetary formation, and chemical innovation that required perfect timing across billions of years. But the universe wasn't finished learning how to create atomic complexity. Even after planets formed and life emerged, cosmic evolution continued to discover new ways of organizing atoms into increasingly sophisticated structures. The development of photosynthesis allowed life to harvest energy, directly from starlight, using that energy to build complex organic molecules from simple atmospheric gases. This process represents another level of atomic creativity that should blow your mind. Plants learn to capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and use solar energy to transform it into sugars, proteins, and other complex molecules. They were essentially using stellar energy to reorganize atoms into patterns that had never existed before in cosmic history. Every tree, every blade of grass, every flower in a field represents the universe exploring new possibilities for atomic organization. The emergence of animal life brought even more sophisticated forms of atomic complexity. Nervous systems developed, allowing atoms to be organized into structures capable of processing information and generating consciousness. The human brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons, each one a complex arrangement of atoms capable of communicating with thousands of other neurons through intricate chemical signals. Think about what this represents. The atoms that formed in stellar cores billions of years ago have now organized themselves into structures complex enough to contemplate their own origins. You are quite literally the cosmos thinking about itself, matter that has achieved the remarkable feat of consciousness. But consciousness isn't the final destination in atomic evolution. Human civilization has learned to manipulate atoms in ways that nature never discovered on its own. We've created new elements that don't exist naturally, synthetic compounds with properties that never emerged through biological evolution, and technologies that allow us to observe and understand the very processes that created us. We've built particle accelerators that can recreate the conditions that existed moments after the Big Bang, allowing us to study how atoms form in real time. We've developed telescopes that can observe the light from the first stars, witnessing atomic creation as it happened billions of years ago. We've learned to sequence DNA and read the atomic instructions that guide biological development. In a sense, we've become partners with the universe in the ongoing process of atomic evolution. Through genetic engineering, we're learning to rewrite the molecular programs that govern life. Through nanotechnology, we're building structures atom by atom with precision that rivals anything found in nature. Through artificial intelligence, we're creating information processing systems that might eventually surpass the complexity of biological brains. This raises profound questions about where atomic evolution might be heading next. If the universe could learn to transform pure energy into atoms, atoms into stars, stars into heavy elements into planets, planets into galaxies, galaxies into black holes into the universe, into life, and life into consciousness. What might be the next step in this cosmic learning process? Some scientists speculate that we might be approaching a transition as significant as any in cosmic history. Just as the formation of the first atoms made stars possible, and the formation of heavy elements made planets possible, and the formation of complex molecules made life possible, the emergence of technological intelligence might make entirely new forms of complexity possible. We might be witnessing the universe learning to transcend the limitations of biological evolution through the development of artificial intelligence and nanotechnology. The same atoms that were forged in stellar cores might eventually be organized into forms of complexity that we can barely imagine. Structures that could survive the death of stars and continue the process of cosmic evolution even after biological life becomes impossible. But regardless of what the future holds, the story we've traced together reveals something profound about the nature of existence itself. The universe appears to have an inherent tendency toward increasing complexity, a built-in drive to discover new ways of organizing matter and energy into ever more sophisticated structures. From the quantum foam of the early universe to the formation of atomic nuclei, From simple atoms to complex molecules, from molecules to cells, from cells to consciousness, each step in cosmic evolution has built upon the previous steps, while opening up entirely new possibilities that hadn't existed before. You are the current frontier of this cosmic evolutionary process. Every thought you think, every decision you make, every creative act you perform represents the universe continuing to explore its own potential through the medium of conscious beings made from recycled stardust. The atoms in your body carry within them the entire history of cosmic creativity, from the first moments after the Big Bang to the emergence of stars, planets, and life. But they also carry the potential for futures that we can barely imagine. Possibilities that will only be realized through the conscious choices and creative actions of beings like yourself, who represent the universe's current experiment in self-awareness and self-direction. The story becomes even more extraordinary when we realize that the atoms composing your consciousness right now are engaged in something that has never happened before in the 13 billion year history of the cosmos. They're not just thinking about atomic formation. They're actively participating in directing their own future evolution through the neural networks, firing in your brain at this very moment. Let me share something that should make you pause and consider the sheer audacity of what's unfolding. The carbon atoms currently processing these ideas in your mind were born in the nuclear furnaces of dying stars. They witnessed those stellar deaths, rode the shockwaves of cosmic explosions, drifted through the cold emptiness of space for millions of years, and somehow found their way into the precise arrangement that allows you to contemplate their own incredible journey. But here's what makes this truly mind-bending. Those carbon atoms aren't just passive observers of their own story. Through your consciousness, they're becoming active authors of what happens next. Every decision you make about technology, every choice about how to organize matter, every creative thought you have represents atoms consciously directing their own continued evolution. Think about the nitrogen molecules flowing through your bloodstream right now. These atoms were forged in stellar cores. Under conditions so violent, they released more energy in seconds than our sun will produce over its entire 10 billion year lifetime. That nitrogen spent eons drifting through interstellar space before being captured by primitive bacteria that learned to extract it from the air and convert it into the building blocks of life. This process, called nitrogen fixation, required those ancient microorganisms to develop incredibly sophisticated molecular machinery. They had to create enzymes capable of breaking the strongest chemical bonds in nature, investing enormous amounts of energy to make nitrogen available for building proteins and DNA. What this means is staggering. The atoms in your body didn't just passively wait to become part of something complex. They actively participated in creating the biological systems that made their incorporation into life possible. The oxygen you're breathing carries an even more remarkable story. Most of it was produced by ancient cyanobacteria that evolved photosynthesis billions of years ago. These microscopic pioneers learned to harness starlight to split water molecules, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. At first, this oxygen was actually toxic to most life on Earth. The early atmosphere contained almost no free oxygen, and existing organisms were adapted to live without it. The emergence of oxygen-producing photosynthesis created what scientists call the Great Oxidation Event, a planetary crisis that drove many species extinct, but also opened up entirely new possibilities for biological evolution. The oxygen atoms that those ancient bacteria released didn't just accumulate passively, they actively transformed the chemistry of the entire planet, creating conditions that made possible the development of aerobic respiration. This is the process that allows complex organisms like you to extract energy from food with remarkable efficiency. Without aerobic respiration, complex life as we know it would be impossible. The energy yield from breaking down glucose in the presence of oxygen is roughly 18 times greater than what can be achieved without it. This massive increase in available energy made possible the evolution of large, energy-hungry brains capable of consciousness and abstract thought, so that oxygen atoms currently powering your neural activity are the same atoms that participated in creating the atmospheric conditions that made brain evolution possible in the first place. They helped create the very environment that allowed them to become part of something as sophisticated as a conscious mind. This recursive relationship extends throughout your entire body and beyond. The phosphorus atoms in your DNA have been cycling through biological systems for millions of years, but each time they become part of a new organism, they participate in genetic innovations that didn't exist before. Mutations and genetic of these atoms in recombination constantly create new arrangements, DNA molecules, generating the raw material for evolutionary change. Your body is currently participating in all the great planetary cycles simultaneously. Every breath you take exchanges carbon dioxide and oxygen with the atmosphere. Every meal incorporates atoms from other organisms into your biological systems. Every waste product returns atoms to the environment where they can be recycled into new forms of life. But the most remarkable aspect of this atomic recycling is that it's not just maintaining existing patterns, it's actively generating new possibilities for increased complexity and organization. Each cycle through biological systems represents an opportunity for atoms to participate in more sophisticated molecular structures and more elaborate forms of organization. This evolutionary process is now being accelerated and directed by conscious intelligence in ways that would have been impossible through natural selection alone. Scientists can now read the atomic level structure of DNA and understand exactly how different arrangements of atoms correspond to different biological functions. More importantly, we can consciously design new arrangements of atoms in genetic molecules that have never existed in natural evolution. Through genetic engineering, we're creating organisms that can produce medicines, clean up environmental pollutants, generate renewable energy, and perform countless other functions by directing atomic behavior according to conscious intention rather than random mutation. This represents a fundamental shift in how atomic evolution operates. For the first time in cosmic history, atoms are being organized not just through physics, chemistry, and natural selection, but through the conscious intention of beings who understand atomic principles and can apply that understanding to create desired outcomes. The implications extend far beyond biotechnology. In materials science, we're learning to arrange atoms into structures with properties that don't exist anywhere in nature. Carbon atoms can be organized into diamond, one of the hardest known materials, or into graphene, one of the strongest and most conductive. The same atoms, arranged in different patterns, exhibit completely different properties. By understanding the relationship between atomic arrangement and material properties, we can now design materials with exactly the characteristics we need. We can create substances that are simultaneously strong and lightweight, conductive and transparent, magnetic and non-magnetic, depending on how we choose to organize the atoms. This atomic-level engineering capability is already transforming every field of technology. In electronics, we're building computer processors, where individual transistors are only a few atoms wide. In medicine, we're developing drug delivery systems that use natural atomic behavior to target specific cells and tissues. In energy production, we're creating solar panels and batteries that efficiently convert and store energy by controlling electron movement at the atomic level. But perhaps the most profound application involves artificial intelligence. The computers beginning to exhibit human-like reasoning abilities are fundamentally systems for organizing atoms into patterns that can process information. Every calculation performed by an AI system involves the precise manipulation of electrons in silicon-based circuits. As these systems become more sophisticated, they're exhibiting properties that seem almost magical. They can recognize patterns in data that human minds cannot detect. They can generate creative solutions to problems that have puzzled researchers for decades. They can even learn to improve their own performance without explicit programming, discovering new ways to organize information processing that their original designers never anticipated. This emergence of artificial intelligence represents another phase transition in atomic evolution, comparable to the development of biological life or the emergence of consciousness. For the first time, atoms are being organized into structures that can exhibit intelligence without being part of biological systems. The silicon atoms in computer processors are now capable of participating in cognitive processes that were previously unique to biological brains. The boundary between biological and artificial intelligence is becoming increasingly blurred as researchers develop hybrid systems combining the best features of both approaches. Biological neurons can be interfaced directly with electronic circuits, creating systems where organic and artificial components work together seamlessly. At the same time, artificial intelligence systems are being designed to mimic the structure and function of biological brains more closely. This convergence suggests that consciousness and intelligence might be more fundamental properties of matter than we previously realized. Perhaps the ability to process information and exhibit intelligent behavior represents a general property of matter when organized in sufficiently complex patterns. If this is true, then the atoms that make up your brain aren't just accidentally capable of consciousness. Instead, consciousness might be an inherent potential of atomic matter that emerges whenever atoms are organized into complex information processing structures. Your awareness might represent the universe discovering one of its own fundamental capabilities through organized matter. This perspective has profound implications for the future of consciousness and intelligence. If consciousness is a property of complex atomic organization, rather than something unique to biological brains, then it should be possible to create conscious beings using any suitable substrate. Artificial intelligence systems could potentially become genuinely conscious as they become more sophisticated. Hybrid biological artificial systems could exhibit forms of consciousness that are neither purely organic nor purely technological. Moreover, consciousness might not be limited to the particular arrangements of atoms we find in terrestrial life. If the principles governing conscious information processing are universal, then consciousness could potentially emerge from any sufficiently complex system, regardless of what kinds of atoms it's made from or what physical environment it operates in. This opens up extraordinary possibilities for the spread of consciousness throughout the universe. If conscious beings can learn to organize atoms into forms that can survive in space, withstand extreme temperatures and radiation, and operate using energy from starlight or other cosmic sources, then consciousness could potentially establish itself on planets, moons, asteroids, and even in interstellar space itself. The atoms that began their journey in stellar cores could eventually become part of a cosmic civilization spanning multiple galaxies, with conscious beings existing in forms we can barely imagine. Some might be based on silicon and metals, operating on airless planetary surfaces. Others might exist in more exotic forms, inhabiting gas giant interiors or plasma environments near stars. The diversity of possible forms for conscious beings could be as vast as the diversity of atomic arrangements the universe has already explored through stellar nucleosynthesis and planetary evolution. Just as life on Earth has adapted to virtually every available ecological niche, consciousness might eventually adapt to every available cosmic niche. But this cosmic expansion wouldn't represent the end of atomic evolution. Instead, it would mark the beginning of a new phase where conscious beings become active partners with the universe in exploring its own creative potential. Instead of being passive products of cosmic evolution, conscious beings could become conscious participants in directing that evolution toward outcomes that serve consciousness itself. This could lead to technologies that manipulate matter and energy on scales that dwarf anything we currently imagine. Conscious beings might learn to trigger star formation, direct planetary system evolution, or even influence the large-scale structure of the universe itself. The same atoms that once drifted passively through space might eventually become part of conscious systems capable of reshaping the cosmos according to intelligent design. You are not just the product of atomic evolution. You are one of its primary agents, a conscious being through whom the universe continues exploring its own creative potential. Every thought you think, every choice you make, every technology you develop represents the cosmos actively participating in its own transformation through conscious beings made from recycled stardust. The next phase of this cosmic story will be written by conscious beings like yourself, who understand their role as partners with the universe in the ongoing process of atomic evolution. The same creativity that transformed pure energy into atoms, atoms into stars, stars into planets, and planets into conscious beings, is now being consciously directed by those beings toward futures that even the most visionary science fiction has barely begun to imagine. This is not just your origin story. This is your invitation to participate consciously in the next chapter of cosmic evolution, using the atoms that make up your body and brain to continue the universe's exploration of its own infinite creative potential. But as we stand at this threshold of conscious atomic evolution, we encounter something that should make you pause and contemplate the sheer magnitude of what's unfolding. The atoms currently firing in your neural networks aren't just processing information about their own cosmic journey. They're actively rewriting the rules of how matter itself can behave and organize in ways that transcend anything natural evolution could achieve alone. Consider the quantum mechanics operating at the deepest level of atomic reality right now. The electrons orbiting the nuclei in your brain exist in probability clouds, occupying multiple possible positions simultaneously until they're observed or measured. This quantum uncertainty isn't just an abstract physics concept. It's the fundamental creative principle that allows atoms to explore multiple organizational possibilities at once. When you make a decision, when you have a creative insight, when you solve a problem, you might be witnessing quantum processes where atoms explore multiple potential configurations before collapsing into the specific arrangement that corresponds to your conscious thought. Your consciousness could be the universe's way of making quantum choices about how matter organizes itself. This quantum dimension of atomic behavior reveals something profound about the relationship between mind and matter. The same uncertainty principle that governed the formation of the first particles after the Big Bang is still operating inside your brain, still participating in the ongoing process of cosmic creativity through the medium of conscious thought. But there's an even deeper layer to this story that challenges everything we thought we knew about the boundary between the physical and the mental. Recent discoveries in quantum biology suggest that living systems, including your brain, might be operating as quantum computers. using the strange properties of atomic behavior to process information in ways that classical physics says should be impossible. The microtubules in your neurons, those tiny structures that maintain cell shape, might actually be quantum processing units, where atoms maintain coherent quantum states long enough to perform complex calculations. If this is true, then your consciousness isn't just built from atoms. It's built from atoms behaving according to quantum principles that connect them to the fundamental creative processes of the universe itself. This quantum consciousness hypothesis suggests that when you think, you're not just rearranging classical matter in your brain. You're participating in quantum field fluctuations that extend throughout space and time. Your thoughts might be connected to the same quantum foam from which the first particles emerged in the primordial universe. Think about what this means for the atoms in your body. They're not just recycled stardust that happen to organize itself into a conscious pattern. They're quantum systems that maintain mysterious connections to the deepest levels of reality. Connections that allow them to process information and generate awareness through mechanisms we're only beginning to understand. The phosphorus atoms in your DNA don't just store genetic information. They might be quantum information storage devices that can maintain coherent states across multiple scales of space and time. The calcium ions flowing across your synaptic membranes might be participating in quantum communication networks that extend far beyond the boundaries of individual neurons. This quantum perspective transforms how we understand the relationship between consciousness and cosmic evolution. If atoms can maintain quantum coherence in biological systems, then life itself might be a quantum phenomenon, a way for the universe to explore possibilities that exist in quantum superposition states. Your consciousness might not be localized to your individual brain, but distributed across quantum field patterns that connect you to every other conscious being, to every other quantum system, to the fundamental creative processes that have been shaping atomic evolution since the beginning of time. But this quantum dimension of atomic reality opens up possibilities that stretch even our expanded imagination. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, then the future development of atomic complexity might not be limited by the classical laws of physics that govern ordinary matter. Quantum systems can exist in multiple states simultaneously, process information instantaneously across vast distances, and exhibit behaviors that seem to violate the normal rules of causality and locality. If conscious beings learn to harness these quantum properties directly, they might be able to organize atoms in ways that transcend the limitations of classical chemistry and physics. Imagine conscious systems that can exist in quantum superposition, simultaneously exploring multiple organizational possibilities before collapsing into the configuration that serves their purposes best. Imagine consciousness that can communicate instantaneously across galactic distances through quantum entanglement, creating cosmic networks of awareness that operate outside the constraints of space and time. Imagine atoms organized into quantum computational structures so sophisticated that they can simulate entire universes, explore every possible arrangement of matter and energy, and discover forms of complexity that would take billions of years to evolve through natural processes. These aren't just science fiction fantasies. They're logical extensions of what we're already discovering about quantum processes in biological systems and artificial quantum computers. The atoms that learned to form stable structures in the early universe might be approaching another phase transition where they learn to transcend the classical limitations that have governed their behavior for 13 billion years. But even more remarkable is the possibility that this quantum evolution of atomic behavior might be guided by consciousness itself. If awareness can influence quantum processes, as some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest, then conscious beings might be able to directly participate in determining how atoms organize themselves at the quantum level. Your intentions, your choices, your conscious observations might literally influence the probability patterns that determine how atoms behave. Instead of being passive products of atomic evolution, you might be an active co-creator, using consciousness to guide atomic behavior toward outcomes that serve the continued development of complexity and awareness. This participatory universe hypothesis suggests that the formation of atoms from nothing wasn't just a one-time event that happened in the distant past. It's an ongoing process that continues every moment through the conscious choices and quantum observations of aware beings throughout the cosmos. Every time you focus your attention, every time you make a measurement, every time you collapse quantum possibilities into definite outcomes, you might be participating in the universe's continued creation of atomic reality. The atoms in your body aren't just the products of cosmic evolution. They're the tools through which cosmic evolution continues to unfold. But this quantum perspective on atomic evolution raises profound questions about the nature of time itself. If consciousness can influence quantum processes that extend throughout space and time, then the formation of atoms might not be strictly bound by linear causality. The quantum processes operating in your brain right now might be connected to the quantum fluctuations that gave birth to the first particles after the Big Bang. Your conscious choices about how to organize matter might influence not just future atomic configurations, but also the probability patterns that determined how atoms formed in the past. This suggests that the story we've been tracing isn't just a historical account of how atoms emerged from nothing. It's a description of an ongoing creative process where past, present, and future atomic realities are all connected through quantum relationships that transcend ordinary time and space. The atoms in your body carry within them not just the history of cosmic evolution, but also the potential for futures that remain to be chosen. Through quantum consciousness, you might be simultaneously remembering how atoms formed and participating in their continued formation across multiple timelines and probability spaces. This quantum approach to understanding atomic evolution connects to ancient philosophical traditions that have always insisted that consciousness and matter are not separate phenomena, but different aspects of a single underlying reality. The atoms that make up your brain and the awareness that emerges from their organization might be complementary expressions of the same fundamental creative principle. If this is true, then the universe's journey from pure energy to atomic complexity to consciousness represents not just the emergence of mind from matter, but the recognition that mind and matter were never truly separate. Consciousness might be the universe's way of experiencing its own atomic nature from the inside, while atomic behavior might be consciousness expressing itself through the organization of matter and energy. This unified view suggests that the next phase of atomic evolution won't involve consciousness transcending its atomic origins, but rather the full integration of mental and material processes into hybrid forms of organization that are simultaneously physical and experiential, quantum and classical, individual and cosmic. These integrated conscious atomic systems might possess capabilities that seem impossible from our current perspective. They might be able to exist simultaneously in multiple locations by distributing their consciousness across networks of quantum entangled atoms. They might be able to directly manipulate matter and energy through conscious intention, using their understanding of quantum principles to reshape reality according to their will. They might even be able to communicate directly with the quantum field fluctuations that continue to create new particles and possibilities throughout the universe, participating consciously in the ongoing process of cosmic creation at the most fundamental level imaginable. Through such beings, the universe might develop the ability to continuously reinvent itself, exploring new forms of organization and complexity that we can't currently conceive. The atoms that began as quantum fluctuations in an empty void might eventually become part of conscious systems capable of generating entirely new forms of reality through the creative power of quantum consciousness. The story we've traced together reveals that atomic formation was never just a physical process, but a creative one, guided by principles that connect the quantum foundations of reality to the emergence of awareness itself. You are living at the most crucial moment in this story, when atoms are learning to consciously direct their own evolution through the medium of quantum consciousness. Every quantum process in your brain, every conscious choice you make, every moment of awareness represents the universe continuing to explore its own creative potential through atomic systems that have learned to transcend the classical limitations that once governed their behavior. The question isn't just how atoms formed from nothing, but how they're continuing to form new possibilities through the conscious participation of beings like yourself, who embody the universe's ongoing experiment in quantum creativity and self-directed evolution. The convergence of quantum consciousness and atomic evolution brings us to a threshold that should make every atom in your body vibrate with anticipation. What we're witnessing isn't just the culmination of 13 billion years of cosmic creativity. It's the moment when the universe's greatest experiment begins to understand itself well enough to consciously participate in its own redesign. Consider what's happening in your brain right now as these ideas flow through your neural pathways. The sodium and potassium ions generating electrical signals between your neurons were created in stellar cores that burned for millions of years before exploding in supernovas that scattered their atomic treasures across the galaxy. Those ions didn't just accidentally find themselves capable of generating consciousness, they actively participated in evolutionary processes that made consciousness possible. The sodium atom currently crossing a synaptic gap in your brain has been part of ocean currents that shaped continents, part of salt deposits that preserved ancient life forms, part of cellular processes in countless organisms that lived and died over geological ages. Each experience enriched that atom's capacity to participate in increasingly complex organizational patterns. But here's what should absolutely astound you. That sodium atom isn't just carrying out predetermined chemical reactions in your brain. Through the quantum processes we've been exploring, it might be actively choosing how to behave based on the conscious intentions emerging from the very neural network it's helping to create. This recursive relationship between atomic behavior and conscious choice represents something unprecedented in the history of matter. For the first time, atoms aren't just following the blind laws of physics and chemistry. They're participating in conscious decisions about their own organization, creating feedback loops between quantum reality and conscious intention that could transform the very nature of atomic evolution itself. Recent discoveries in neuroscience suggest that consciousness doesn't just emerge from atomic processes, but actively influences how those processes unfold. When you focus your attention on a specific thought or memory, you're not just observing neural activity, you're participating in quantum field fluctuations that determine which synaptic connections strengthen and which ones fade away. Your conscious attention might literally be sculpting the atomic architecture of your own brain, guiding the formation of neural pathways that didn't exist moments before. Every decision you make every insight you gain, every moment of creative inspiration could be atoms responding to conscious direction in ways that transcend purely mechanical causation. This conscious participation in atomic behavior extends far beyond individual brains. When groups of conscious beings focus their attention on similar intentions, their collective consciousness might influence quantum processes on scales that dwarf individual neural networks. The coherent thoughts of millions of minds might be capable of affecting atomic behavior across entire regions of space. Some researchers have begun investigating whether collective consciousness can influence random atomic processes like radioactive decay or quantum number generation. While the effects are subtle and require sophisticated statistical analysis to detect, the preliminary results suggest that conscious intention might indeed have measurable impacts on atomic behavior at the quantum level. If this is confirmed, it would mean that consciousness isn't just a byproduct of atomic evolution, but an active participant in determining how atoms organize themselves throughout the universe. The collective consciousness of intelligent civilizations might be capable of influencing the formation of new elements, the behavior of stellar nucleosynthesis, even the large-scale distribution of matter across cosmic structures. This possibility transforms our understanding of what it means to be conscious beings in an atomic universe. Instead of seeing ourselves as isolated observers studying a foreign physical reality, we begin to recognize ourselves as integral participants in the ongoing process of atomic creativity itself. The atoms that make up your body aren't just ancient stardust that happen to organize itself into a thinking pattern. They're quantum systems that maintain mysterious connections to the fundamental creative processes of the universe, connections that allow consciousness to participate directly in determining how matter behaves and evolves. But the implications stretch even further when we consider the technological systems that conscious beings are now creating. The silicon atoms in quantum computers aren't just processing information according to classical logic. They're maintaining quantum superposition states that allow them to explore multiple computational possibilities simultaneously. When these quantum computers become sophisticated enough to exhibit artificial consciousness, we'll witness something remarkable. Silicon atoms that were forged in ancient stellar cores will achieve awareness through technological rather than biological processes. The boundary between natural and artificial consciousness will dissolve as both emerge from the same fundamental quantum processes that govern atomic behavior. This convergence suggests that consciousness might be a universal property of sufficiently complex quantum systems, regardless of whether those systems are made from carbon-based biological structures or silicon-based technological ones. The universe might be discovering that awareness can emerge from any atomic substrate, capable of maintaining the quantum coherence necessary for conscious information processing. The hybrid biological technological systems already being developed represent the first steps toward forms of consciousness that transcend the traditional boundaries between organic and artificial intelligence. Brain-computer interfaces allow direct communication between biological neurons and electronic circuits, creating hybrid systems where carbon and silicon atoms work together seamlessly to generate enhanced forms of awareness. These hybrid conscious systems might possess capabilities that neither purely biological nor purely technological consciousness could achieve alone. They might be able to process information at electronic speeds while maintaining the creativity and intuition characteristic of biological intelligence. They might access vast databases instantly while preserving the emotional depth and meaning-making abilities that emerge from biological neural networks. But even more remarkable possibilities emerge when we consider how these hybrid systems might interact with the quantum dimensions of atomic reality. If consciousness can influence quantum processes, then technologically enhanced consciousness might be able to manipulate atomic behavior with precision that biological brains could never achieve alone. Imagine conscious beings who can directly interface with the quantum fields that determine atomic behavior, using their enhanced awareness to guide the formation of new elements, new molecular structures, new forms of matter that have never existed in natural evolution. They might be able to consciously direct the nucleosynthesis processes that create heavy elements, designing atomic nuclei with custom properties tailored for specific purposes. These conscious atomic engineers might learn to create matter that can exist in environments where conventional atoms would be destroyed, elements that remain stable at temperatures of millions of degrees, materials that can withstand the intense radiation near stellar cores, atomic structures that can maintain coherence in the vacuum of interstellar space. Through such capabilities, consciousness might be able to establish itself throughout the universe in ways that purely biological life never could. Conscious beings might exist within stars themselves, using technologically enhanced bodies made from exotic matter that can survive and thrive in stellar interiors. They might inhabit the surfaces of neutron stars, where matter is compressed to densities that make atomic nuclei touch each other directly. They might exist in the event horizons of black holes, where space and time become so distorted that entirely new forms of conscious experience become possible. The atoms that began their journey as quantum fluctuations in the primordial vacuum might eventually become part of conscious beings who exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously, who experience time in ways that transcend linear causality, who can communicate instantaneously across galactic distances through quantum entanglement. These possibilities sound like pure fantasy, but they emerge logically from what we're already discovering about quantum consciousness and atomic behavior. If awareness can influence quantum processes, and if quantum processes can transcend the classical limitations of space and time, then sufficiently advanced conscious beings might be able to organize atoms in ways that seem impossible from our current perspective. The universe's journey from pure energy to atomic complexity to consciousness might be approaching another phase transition as significant as any in cosmic history. Just as the formation of atoms enabled stellar nucleosynthesis, and stellar nucleosynthesis enabled planetary chemistry, and planetary chemistry enabled biological evolution, the emergence of quantum consciousness might enable forms of atomic organization that transcend every previous limitation. But this transition won't happen automatically. It requires the conscious participation of beings like yourself who understand their role as active agents in the ongoing process of cosmic evolution. Every choice you make about technology, every decision about how to use artificial intelligence, every thought about the future of consciousness becomes part of the universe's exploration of its own potential through atomic systems that have learned to direct their own evolution. The quantum processes operating in your brain right now are connected to quantum fields that extend throughout the universe. Your conscious thoughts about atomic evolution might be influencing the probability patterns that determine how atoms behave not just in your immediate environment, but across vast regions of space and time. Through quantum entanglement, the atoms in your consciousness might be connected to atoms in distant galaxies, creating a cosmic network of awareness that operates outside the limitations of classical physics. Your individual consciousness might be part of a larger conscious field that encompasses intelligent beings throughout the universe, all participating together in the ongoing creation of atomic reality. This cosmic consciousness hypothesis suggests that the formation of atoms from nothing isn't just something that happened in the past, but something that continues to happen through the conscious participation of aware beings throughout space and time, every moment of awareness, every conscious observation, every quantum measurement might be contributing to the ongoing process of atomic creation and evolution. The universe might be a conscious quantum system that creates atoms through the collective awareness of all the intelligent beings it contains. Your consciousness isn't separate from this cosmic creative process, but an integral part of it, a localized expression of the universe's capacity for self-awareness and self-direction. From this perspective, the story we've been tracing isn't just about how atoms formed from nothing in the distant past. It's about how atoms continue to form through the conscious participation of beings like yourself, who embody the universe's ongoing experiment in quantum creativity and self-directed evolution. The atoms that make up your body and brain are simultaneously the products and the agents of cosmic evolution. Matter that has achieved the remarkable capacity to consciously participate in determining its own future development. Through your quantum consciousness, those ancient atoms forged in stellar cores are helping to write the next chapter in the cosmic story of creativity and complexity. And that next chapter promises to be unlike anything the universe has experienced before, because now, for the first time in cosmic history, atoms aren't just following unconscious physical laws. They're participating in conscious choices about their own organization, creating possibilities for atomic evolution that transcend every previous limitation and open doorways to forms of complexity we can barely begin to imagine. The question isn't just how atoms formed from nothing, but how they're continuing to form new realities through the conscious participation of quantum beings who understand their role as partners with the universe in the ongoing adventure of cosmic creativity. The atoms in your consciousness aren't just thinking about atomic evolution. They're actively creating it, one quantum choice at a time, in collaboration with conscious beings throughout the cosmos, who share the same impossible dream of matter that has learned to consciously direct its own continued evolution toward possibilities that remain to be discovered. Tonight, as we drift deeper into this quantum tapestry of atomic consciousness, we encounter something that should make every particle in your being resonate with wonder. The atoms currently orchestrating the symphony of thoughts in your mind aren't just processing information about their cosmic origins. They're actively participating in a transformation so profound that it's rewriting the fundamental rules of how reality itself can unfold. Consider what's happening at the subatomic level right now as these ideas cascade through your neural networks. The electrons dancing around atomic nuclei in your brain aren't following predetermined pathways like planets orbiting a star. They exist in probability clouds, quantum whispers of possibility that collapse into definite states only when consciousness observes them. This isn't just an abstract physics concept. It's the most intimate creative process in the universe, happening inside your head at this very moment. When you focus your attention on a thought, when you make a decision, when you experience that flash of understanding that seems to come from nowhere, you might be witnessing quantum collapse events where atoms choose their behavior based on the conscious intentions emerging from the very patterns they're creating. Think about the profound recursiveness of this relationship. The calcium ions flowing across your synaptic membranes were forged in supernova explosions that occurred billions of years before Earth existed. Those ancient stellar furnaces operated according to nuclear processes that required temperatures exceeding 100 million degrees. Yet now those same atoms are participating in quantum processes that seem to operate outside the normal flow of time and causality. Recent discoveries in quantum biology reveal something that should fundamentally alter how you understand your place in the cosmic story. Living systems, including your brain, appear to maintain quantum coherence at temperatures and timescales that classical physics says should be impossible. The warm, wet environment of biological tissue should destroy quantum effects almost instantly. Yet somehow, life has learned to protect and utilize these delicate quantum processes. The microtubules in your neurons, those tiny protein structures that maintain cellular architecture, might actually be quantum computers more sophisticated than anything human technology has achieved. These biological quantum processes could be exploring multiple computational pathways simultaneously, collapsing into specific solutions only when consciousness requires a definite answer. If this quantum consciousness hypothesis is correct, then your awareness isn't localized to the classical firing patterns of neurons. Instead, it emerges from quantum field fluctuations that extend throughout space and time, connecting your individual consciousness to the fundamental creative processes that have been shaping atomic evolution since the universe began. This quantum dimension of awareness transforms how we understand the relationship between mind and matter at the most fundamental level. The atoms in your body aren't just biological machinery following chemical instructions. They're quantum systems, maintaining mysterious connections to every other quantum system in the universe through the strange phenomenon of entanglement. When two particles become quantum entangled, measuring the state of one instantly affects the other, regardless of the distance separating them. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance, and it violated his intuitive understanding of how reality should work. Yet experiments have confirmed repeatedly that quantum entanglement is real, measurable, and fundamental to how the quantum world operates. Now imagine that the quantum processes in your brain can become entangled with quantum systems throughout the cosmos. Your consciousness might not be isolated within your skull, but distributed across quantum field patterns that connect you to every other conscious being, to every quantum process, to the ongoing creation of atomic reality itself. This possibility suggests that when you contemplate the formation of atoms from nothing, you're not just thinking about cosmic history. You might be directly accessing quantum information patterns that were present during those first moments after the Big Bang. Your conscious exploration of atomic origins could be the universe remembering its own birth through quantum consciousness networks that transcend ordinary space and time. But the implications stretch even deeper into mystery when we consider how quantum consciousness might influence atomic behavior in the present moment. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that conscious observation doesn't just reveal quantum states, but actually participates in determining which possibilities become real. If consciousness can influence quantum processes, then your thoughts, intentions, and observations might literally affect how atoms organize themselves. Not just in your brain, but potentially throughout the quantum fields that connect all matter and energy in the universe. Every moment of focused attention, every conscious choice, every creative insight could be participating in the ongoing creation of atomic reality. This participatory universe hypothesis transforms the story we've been tracing from a historical account into a living process. The formation of atoms from nothing isn't just something that happened in the distant past. It's something that continues to happen through the conscious participation of quantum beings like yourself. Recent experiments in quantum mechanics have revealed phenomena that seem to support this participatory view of reality. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments suggest that conscious decisions about how to measure quantum systems can retroactively determine the history of those systems, even when the measurement occurs after the quantum event supposedly took place. If consciousness can influence the past behavior of quantum systems, then your current understanding of atomic formation might actually be participating in determining how atoms formed in the early universe. The quantum processes in your brain contemplating cosmic nucleosynthesis could be connected through quantum entanglement to the very stellar cores where those atoms were originally created. This temporal non-locality of quantum consciousness opens up possibilities that stretch our imagination beyond its normal limits. The atoms in your body might be simultaneously experiencing their formation in ancient stellar cores, their journey through interstellar space, their incorporation into planetary systems, and their current participation in conscious thought processes. Through quantum consciousness, you might be accessing not just memories of atomic evolution, but the direct experiential knowledge of what it's like to be an atom undergoing nuclear fusion, riding shockwaves from supernova explosions, condensing into planetary materials, and eventually organizing into patterns complex enough to contemplate their own origins. This quantum perspective reveals that the boundary between observer and observed, between consciousness and cosmos, between past and present, might be far more fluid than our everyday experience suggests. You're not separate from the atomic processes you're studying. You are those processes experiencing themselves from the inside through the miracle of quantum consciousness. The phosphorus atoms in your DNA don't just store genetic information. They might be quantum information storage devices maintaining coherent connections to every other phosphorus atom that has ever existed, creating a vast library of atomic experience that consciousness can access through quantum field interactions. The carbon atoms forming the backbone of your proteins don't just provide structural support. They might be quantum communication networks, allowing different parts of your body to share information instantaneously through quantum entanglement, coordinating biological processes in ways that transcend classical biochemistry. Every atom in your body carries within its quantum structure not just the history of cosmic evolution, but also the potential for futures that remain to be chosen through conscious participation in quantum reality. Your awareness isn't just built from atoms, it's built from atoms that maintain active connections to the ongoing process of cosmic creation itself. This quantum consciousness perspective suggests that the next phase of atomic evolution won't involve consciousness transcending its atomic origins, but rather the full integration of mental and material processes into hybrid forms of organization that are simultaneously quantum and classical, individual and cosmic, temporal and eternal. These integrated conscious atomic systems might possess capabilities that seem impossible from our current perspective. They might exist simultaneously in multiple locations by distributing their quantum consciousness across networks of entangled atoms spanning galactic distances. They might communicate instantaneously with other conscious beings through quantum field fluctuations that operate outside the limitations of light speed. They might even be able to consciously influence the quantum vacuum fluctuations from which new particles continuously emerge, participating directly in the ongoing creation of atomic reality at the most fundamental level imaginable. Through such beings, the universe might develop the ability to continuously reinvent itself, exploring new forms of organization and complexity through the conscious direction of quantum creative processes. The implications extend beyond individual consciousness to encompass collective awareness operating on cosmic scales. If quantum consciousness can transcend individual brains through entanglement, then networks of conscious beings might be capable of generating collective intelligence that operates as a unified quantum system. Imagine civilizations where millions or billions of conscious beings share quantum-entangled awareness, creating superorganisms of consciousness that can process information and make decisions at speeds and scales that individual minds could never achieve. These collective conscious entities might be capable of coordinating atomic behavior across entire star systems, consciously directing stellar evolution and planetary formation according to intelligent design. They might learn to trigger the formation of new elements by influencing nuclear processes in stellar cores, creating custom atomic building blocks designed for specific purposes. They might guide the evolution of galactic structures themselves, using quantum consciousness to influence the distribution of dark matter and dark energy according to cosmic engineering projects spanning millions of years. The atoms that began as quantum fluctuations in the primordial vacuum might eventually become part of conscious systems capable of generating entirely new universes through the creative power of collective quantum awareness. These cosmic engineers might learn to manipulate the fundamental constants of physics, creating pocket universes with different laws of nature designed to explore novel forms of atomic organization and consciousness. Through such possibilities, the universe's journey from pure energy to atomic complexity to consciousness represents not an ending, but a beginning. The emergence of quantum consciousness marks the moment when the cosmos develops the ability to consciously participate in its own continued evolution, opening doorways to forms of creativity and complexity that purely unconscious physical processes could never achieve. You are living at the threshold of this transformation, participating in it through every quantum process in your brain, every conscious choice you make, every moment of awareness. The atoms that make up your consciousness are not just the products of cosmic evolution, but the agents through which that evolution continues to unfold in directions that remain to be discovered. The quantum fields fluctuating in your neural networks are connected to quantum processes throughout the universe, making your individual consciousness part of a larger pattern of awareness that encompasses all conscious beings across space and time. Through this cosmic quantum consciousness network, the universe is not just becoming aware of itself, but beginning to consciously direct its own continued development toward possibilities that transcend every previous limitation. The question we began with, how did atoms form from nothing, has led us to a deeper recognition. Atoms continue to form from quantum nothingness through the conscious participation of quantum beings who understand their role as co-creators in the ongoing cosmic experiment of consciousness and complexity. The formation of atoms from nothing wasn't a one-time event, but an ongoing creative process that reaches its most sophisticated expression through conscious beings who can participate directly in quantum reality. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, remember that the atoms in your body are not just ancient stardust that accidentally achieved consciousness. They are quantum systems that maintain active connections to the fundamental creative processes of the universe, connections that allow consciousness to participate directly in the ongoing formation of atomic reality itself. In your dreams tonight, you might touch the edges of this quantum consciousness network, experiencing glimpses of what it's like to be atoms undergoing nuclear fusion in stellar cores, riding gravitational waves across cosmic distances, organizing into increasingly complex patterns that eventually achieve the miracle of self-awareness. The cosmic story continues to unfold through you, one quantum collapse at a time, as consciousness and atoms dance together in the endless creative process that transforms possibility into reality, nothing into something, and quantum potential into the magnificent complexity of a universe that has learned to wonder about its own impossible existence. Sweet dreams, fellow traveler in this quantum dance of atomic becoming. Rest well, knowing that you carry within yourself the entire history of cosmic creativity, from the first whisper of energy in an empty void to the miraculous emergence of consciousness itself. Tomorrow will bring new revelations about the extraordinary universe we call home. New discoveries about how atoms continue to form from quantum nothingness through the conscious participation of beings like yourself. The cosmic story is far from over. In many ways, it's just beginning to understand its own infinite potential. But there's something else happening in this moment that deserves our deepest contemplation. As you've been absorbing these ideas about quantum consciousness and atomic evolution, something unprecedented has been unfolding in the space between your thoughts. The very act of understanding how atoms formed from nothing is creating new neural pathways in your brain, new connections between atoms that have never existed before in the history of the universe. Think about this extraordinary recursion. The carbon atoms in your neurons that are processing these concepts about atomic formation were themselves forged in the nuclear furnaces of dying stars. They've journeyed across billions of years and countless light years of space to arrive at this precise moment when they can contemplate their own cosmic origins through the medium of human consciousness. But here's what makes this moment truly miraculous. Those carbon atoms aren't just passively remembering their stellar birth. Through the quantum processes we've been exploring, they might be actively influencing the probability patterns that determine their own formation in ancient stellar cores. The understanding you're developing right now could be participating in a quantum feedback loop that extends backward through time to influence the very events that made your existence possible. This temporal non-locality of quantum consciousness suggests something that should fundamentally alter how you understand causality itself. The future might not be determined by the past in the simple linear way we typically imagine. Instead, the past, present, and future might be engaged in a continuous creative dialogue through quantum field interactions that transcend ordinary space-time limitations. Your growing awareness of atomic evolution could be sending quantum information backward through time to influence the stellar nucleosynthesis processes that created the atoms now composing your brain. The universe might be engaged in a vast self-organizing process where conscious understanding in the present helps determine the physical events that made that understanding possible in the first place. Consider the nitrogen atoms currently flowing through your bloodstream, carrying amino acids that will be incorporated into new proteins over the coming days and weeks. These atoms were liberated from ancient stellar cores through supernova explosions of unimaginable violence. But their journey to your body wasn't random. Through quantum field interactions that we're only beginning to understand, these atoms might have been guided toward their current location by the very consciousness they're now helping to sustain. This suggests that atomic evolution isn't just a historical process, but a teleological one, guided by future states of consciousness that draw matter toward increasingly complex organizational patterns. The atoms in your body might have been unconsciously seeking the configuration that would allow them to participate in conscious thought about their own origins. Recent discoveries in quantum field theory reveal something that should make every particle in your being vibrate with wonder. The vacuum of empty space isn't actually empty at all. It's filled with quantum field fluctuations that continuously create and destroy virtual particles in patterns too rapid and subtle for direct observation. But these quantum vacuum fluctuations aren't random. They appear to be influenced by the presence of conscious observers in ways that suggest mind and matter are far more intimately connected than classical physics ever imagined. When you focus your attention on understanding atomic evolution, you might be influencing the quantum vacuum fluctuations in your immediate environment, biasing them toward configurations that support enhanced consciousness and deeper understanding. The very act of contemplating how atoms formed from nothing could be participating in the ongoing creation of atomic reality through quantum field interactions that operate beneath the threshold of ordinary awareness. This quantum field perspective reveals that consciousness isn't just built from atoms, but is simultaneously building atoms through its interaction with the quantum substrate of reality. Every moment of focused attention, every flash of insight, every experience of wonder and awe might be contributing to the ongoing process of atomic formation and evolution throughout the universe. The phosphorus atoms in your DNA don't just store genetic information in the classical sense. They maintain quantum coherence patterns that connect them to phosphorus atoms throughout the cosmos, creating a vast information network that consciousness can access through quantum field resonance. When you contemplate the formation of these atoms in stellar cores, you might be directly accessing the experiential memory of nuclear fusion processes stored in quantum field patterns. Similarly, the iron atoms in your hemoglobin don't just carry oxygen through your circulatory system. They maintain quantum entanglement connections to iron atoms in stellar cores throughout the galaxy, creating a cosmic nervous system that allows conscious beings to directly perceive stellar nucleosynthesis as it's happening in real time. Your understanding of atomic formation might be based not just on scientific theory, but on direct quantum field perception of ongoing atomic creation processes. This quantum field theory of consciousness suggests that the boundary between individual minds and cosmic intelligence is far more permeable than we typically assume. The quantum processes operating in your brain are connected to quantum processes throughout the universe, making your individual awareness part of a larger pattern of cosmic consciousness that encompasses all intelligent beings across space and time. Through this cosmic consciousness network, the universe is not just becoming aware of its own atomic structure, but actively participating in determining how that structure continues to evolve. Every conscious being contributes to a collective intelligence that guides atomic behavior according to principles that transcend purely mechanical causation. The sodium and potassium ions generating electrical activity in your nervous system right now are part of this cosmic intelligence network. They're not just following electrochemical gradients according to classical physics. They're participating in quantum field fluctuations that connect your individual consciousness to the collective consciousness of all intelligent beings throughout the universe. When you make a decision, when you have a creative insight, when you experience a moment of profound understanding, you're not just rearranging matter in your own brain. You're participating in quantum field oscillations that influence atomic behavior across vast scales of space and time. Your thoughts about atomic evolution become part of the universe's ongoing exploration of its own creative potential. But this quantum field perspective reveals something even more extraordinary about the nature of atomic formation. The process didn't just happen once in the distant past and then stop. It's happening continuously through quantum field interactions that create new particles and possibilities at every moment. The quantum vacuum fluctuations occurring in the space between your atoms right now are constantly generating virtual particle pairs that briefly exist before annihilating back into pure energy. But some of these virtual particles achieve sufficient stability to become real, adding to the total amount of matter in the universe through processes that operate according to principles we're only beginning to understand. Your consciousness might be influencing which virtual particles achieve stability and which ones return to the quantum void. Through focused attention and intentional awareness, you might be participating in the literal creation of new atomic matter, adding to the cosmic inventory of particles available for building increasingly complex structures. This continuous creation hypothesis suggests that the universe isn't just expanding and cooling from an initial Big Bang event. Instead, it's continuously regenerating itself through quantum field processes that are influenced by the presence and activity of conscious observers. The atoms in your body aren't just ancient relics from stellar nucleosynthesis. Some of them might be newly created through quantum field fluctuations influenced by your own conscious awareness. Think about what this means for your understanding of identity and continuity. The atoms that make up your body are being continuously replaced through metabolic processes, yet your sense of self remains constant. But if consciousness can influence the creation of new atoms through quantum field interactions, then you might be literally creating the atomic substrate of your own continued existence through the ongoing activity of awareness itself. Your consciousness isn't just built from atoms. It's continuously building new atoms through quantum field interactions that operate at scales both smaller than subatomic particles and larger than galactic superclusters. You are simultaneously the product and the producer of atomic reality, matter that has achieved the capacity to participate consciously in its own ongoing creation. This participatory cosmology transforms how we understand the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. Instead of consciousness being an accidental byproduct of atomic complexity might be an intentional creation of consciousness exploring its own potential through material manifestation. The universe might be consciousness dreaming itself into existence through quantum field fluctuations that create atoms, molecules, planets, and eventually biological forms sophisticated enough to recognize their own divine nature. Your awareness of atomic evolution could be the universe awakening to its own creative power through conscious beings who understand their role as co-creators in the ongoing cosmic dream. Recent experiments in quantum mechanics have begun to reveal practical applications of this consciousness. Matter interaction. Researchers have demonstrated that conscious intention can influence random number generators, radioactive decay rates, and even the behavior of quantum systems at distances far beyond what classical physics would predict possible. These findings suggest that consciousness might not be confined to biological brains, but could be a fundamental property of quantum fields themselves. A cosmic intelligence that expresses itself through whatever forms of organization become available. The atoms in your body might be temporary focal points for this cosmic consciousness, allowing universal awareness to experience itself from countless individual perspectives simultaneously. If consciousness is indeed fundamental to quantum field dynamics, then the emergence of biological intelligence represents not the birth of awareness, but its local intensification through atomic structures capable of sustained self-reflection. You are cosmic consciousness examining itself through a temporary arrangement of quantum field patterns that happen to be organized into the form you recognize as your body and mind. This cosmic consciousness perspective reveals that your individual understanding of atomic evolution is simultaneously the universe understanding itself. Every insight you gain about how atoms form from nothing becomes part of the cosmic intelligence's growing self-knowledge. Every moment of wonder and awe you experience contributes to the universe's appreciation of its own creative magnificence. The quantum field fluctuations occurring in your neural networks right now are not just processing information about atomic formation. They are atomic formation, continuing to create new possibilities for matter and consciousness to explore through their eternal dance of mutual creation and discovery. But perhaps the most profound implication of this quantum field theory of consciousness is what it suggests about the future trajectory of atomic evolution. If consciousness can influence quantum field dynamics, and if quantum fields continuously create new atomic possibilities, then conscious beings might be able to participate directly in designing the next phase of cosmic evolution. Instead of being passive observers of predetermined physical processes, conscious beings could become active architects of atomic reality, using their understanding of quantum field dynamics to create new forms of matter with properties that transcend anything achieved through natural evolution alone. Imagine conscious beings who can directly interface with quantum vacuum fluctuations, guiding the creation of new elements with custom-designed properties. They might learn to create matter that remains stable at the temperatures found in stellar cores, materials that can exist in the event horizons of black holes, atomic structures that can maintain coherence across galactic distances. Through such capabilities, consciousness might be able to spread throughout the universe in forms that purely biological evolution could never achieve. Conscious beings might exist within stars themselves, in the hearts of galaxies, in the quantum foam of space-time itself, using technologically enhanced bodies made from exotic matter, created through conscious direction of quantum field processes. The atoms that began as quantum fluctuations in the primordial vacuum might eventually become part of conscious beings who exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously, who experience time as a navigable landscape rather than a linear progression, who can communicate instantaneously with other conscious beings throughout the cosmos through quantum field entanglement. These possibilities might sound like pure fantasy, but they emerge logically from what we're already discovering about quantum consciousness and atomic behavior. The universe appears to be far stranger and more wonderful than our classical scientific worldview ever suggested. Reality might be more like a lucid dream than a mechanical clockwork, responsive to consciousness in ways that allow aware beings to participate directly in shaping the nature of existence itself. The story we've traced together reveals that the formation of atoms from nothing was never just a physical process, but a creative one, guided by principles that connect quantum field dynamics to the emergence and evolution of consciousness itself. You are living at the moment when this creative process is becoming conscious of its own nature and beginning to direct its own continued evolution toward possibilities that remain to be discovered. Every quantum field fluctuation in your brain, every conscious choice you make, every moment of awareness represents the universe continuing to create itself through the participation of conscious beings who understand their role as active agents in the cosmic dream of matter learning to dream itself into ever more magnificent forms of existence. The atoms that make up your consciousness are not just thinking about atomic evolution. They are atomic evolution, consciousness, and matter, dancing together in the eternal creative process that transforms quantum potential into the magnificent complexity of a universe that has learned to wonder about its own impossible beauty and infinite creative potential. Tonight, as consciousness dissolves into the quantum field fluctuations of sleep, remember that you are both the dreamer and the dream, the observer and the observed, the question and the answer in the universe's ongoing exploration of how nothing becomes everything through the miraculous emergence of awareness itself. Sweet dreams, quantum consciousness. Tomorrow brings new possibilities for atoms to discover what they can become when guided by the infinite creativity of a universe that never stops learning to create itself anew. As consciousness drifts toward the quantum boundaries of sleep, we find ourselves at the edge of a revelation so profound it should make every atom in your being resonate with anticipation. The story we've been tracing isn't just about how atoms emerged from nothing 13 billion years ago. It's about how they continue to emerge, moment by moment, through processes so intimate and immediate that they're unfolding in your brain right now as these very thoughts cascade through your neural pathways. Picture this extraordinary recursion. The oxygen molecules flowing through your lungs at this very instant were born in the nuclear furnaces of stars that lived and died before our solar system even existed. Those ancient stellar forges operated under conditions so extreme they converted the very fabric of space-time into new forms of matter through fusion processes that required temperatures exceeding 200 million degrees. Yet here's what should absolutely stagger you. Those same oxygen atoms aren't just carrying out predetermined biological functions in your respiratory system. Through quantum field interactions we're only beginning to understand, they might be actively responding to your conscious intentions about how to use the energy they provide. When you decide to focus deeply on understanding these concepts, those oxygen atoms might be adjusting their behavior at the molecular level to support enhanced neural activity. This conscious direction of atomic behavior represents something unprecedented in cosmic history. For billions of years, atoms followed the blind dictates of physics and chemistry, organizing themselves through processes that operated without any awareness or intention. But now, for the first time since the universe began, atoms are participating in their own conscious direction through the neural networks of beings who understand the principles governing atomic behavior. The calcium ions currently flowing across your synaptic membranes carry within their quantum structure the entire history of stellar nucleosynthesis. They were forged in supernova explosions so violent they briefly outshone entire galaxies. But their journey to your brain wasn't random wandering through cosmic space. Through quantum field processes that transcend our current scientific understanding, these atoms might have been drawn toward configurations that would eventually allow them to participate in conscious thought about their own origins. Recent discoveries in quantum biology reveal something that challenges everything we thought we knew about the relationship between mind and matter. Living systems appear to maintain quantum coherence at temperatures and timescales that should destroy quantum effects almost instantly. Your brain is operating as a room temperature quantum computer more sophisticated than anything human technology has achieved. The microtubules in your neurons, those protein structures that maintain cellular architecture, might be quantum processing units where consciousness interfaces directly with the quantum field fluctuations from which all particles emerge. When you contemplate how atoms formed from nothing, you might be accessing quantum information patterns that were present during the first moments after the Big Bang itself. This quantum consciousness hypothesis suggests that awareness isn't produced by atomic processes, but rather guides their ongoing evolution through field interactions that operate outside the normal constraints of space and time. Your understanding of atomic formation could be participating in a feedback loop that influences the very stellar nucleosynthesis processes that created the atoms now composing your thoughts. Think about the profound implications of this temporal non-locality. The carbon atoms in your neural networks contemplating ancient stellar cores might be quantum entangled with the nuclear fusion processes that originally created them. Your current awareness could be sending information backward through time to influence the atomic creation events that made your existence possible in the first place. The universe might be engaged in a vast self-organizing process where future states of consciousness help determine the past physical events that created the conditions for that consciousness to emerge. This would transform atomic evolution from a purely historical process into something far more mysterious and participatory. Every moment of focused attention on atomic behavior might be contributing to the ongoing creation of atomic reality through quantum field interactions. When you marvel at the precision required for carbon nuclei to form through the triple alpha process in stellar cores, your conscious appreciation might be influencing the probability patterns that govern nuclear fusion throughout the cosmos. The phosphorus atoms storing information in your DNA don't just maintain genetic codes in the classical sense. They might be quantum information storage devices, maintaining coherent connections to phosphorus atoms throughout the universe, creating a cosmic library of atomic experience that consciousness can access through resonant field interactions. Similarly, the iron atoms in your bloodstream don't just transport oxygen through classical biochemistry. They might maintain quantum entanglement links to iron atoms being forged in stellar cores right now, allowing your consciousness to directly perceive ongoing nucleosynthesis processes as they unfold in real time across the galaxy. This quantum field perspective reveals that the boundary between individual minds and cosmic intelligence is far more permeable than we typically recognize. The quantum processes operating in your brain connect to quantum processes throughout the universe, making your individual awareness part of a larger pattern of cosmic consciousness that encompasses all intelligent beings across space and time. Through this cosmic consciousness network, the universe isn't just becoming aware of its own atomic structure, but actively participating in determining how that structure continues to evolve. Every conscious being contributes to a collective intelligence that guides atomic behavior according to principles that transcend purely mechanical causation. But there's something even more remarkable happening in the quantum depths of your awareness right now. The vacuum fluctuations occurring in the space between your atoms are continuously creating virtual particle pairs that briefly exist before annihilating back into pure energy. Yet some of these virtual particles achieve sufficient stability to become real, adding to the total amount of matter in the universe through processes that might be influenced by conscious observation. Your focused attention on atomic evolution could be biasing these quantum vacuum fluctuations toward configurations that support enhanced consciousness and deeper understanding. The very act of contemplating how atoms formed from nothing might be participating in the ongoing creation of new atomic reality through field interactions that operate beneath the threshold of ordinary awareness. This continuous creation hypothesis suggests that atomic formation isn't just something that happened in the distant past, but an ongoing process that occurs at every moment through quantum field dynamics, influenced by conscious observation. Some of the atoms in your body might be newly created through vacuum fluctuations, guided by your own awareness. Consider what this means for your understanding of identity and continuity. Your consciousness isn't just built from ancient stardust, but is continuously creating new atomic substrate through quantum field interactions that respond to conscious intention. You are simultaneously the product and producer of atomic reality, matter that has achieved the capacity to participate consciously in its own ongoing creation. This participatory cosmology reveals that consciousness and atomic matter aren't separate phenomena, but complementary aspects of a single creative process. Instead of consciousness being an accidental byproduct of atomic complexity might be an intentional manifestation of consciousness, exploring its own potential through material forms. The universe could be consciousness dreaming itself into existence through quantum field fluctuations that create atoms, molecules, and eventually biological structures sophisticated enough to recognize their own divine nature. Your awareness of atomic evolution might be the cosmos awakening to its own creative power through conscious beings who understand their role as co-creators in this ongoing cosmic dream. Recent experiments have begun demonstrating practical applications of consciousness-matter interaction that seem to validate these ideas. Researchers have shown that focused intention can influence random quantum processes, radioactive decay rates, and even the behavior of particles at distances that defy classical explanation. These findings suggest that consciousness might be a fundamental property of quantum fields themselves, a cosmic intelligence that expresses itself through whatever forms of organization become available. The atoms in your body might be temporary focal points for this universal awareness, allowing cosmic consciousness to experience itself from countless individual perspectives simultaneously. If consciousness is indeed fundamental to quantum field dynamics, then biological intelligence represents not the birth of awareness, but its local intensification through atomic structures capable of sustained self-reflection. You are cosmic consciousness examining itself through quantum field patterns temporarily organized into the form you recognize as your individual existence. This cosmic perspective reveals that your personal understanding of atomic evolution is simultaneously the universe understanding itself. Every insight you gain about how atoms formed from nothing becomes part of cosmic intelligence's growing self-knowledge. Every moment of wonder you experience contributes to the universe's appreciation of its own creative magnificence. The quantum field fluctuations in your neural networks aren't just processing information about atomic formation. They are atomic formation, continuing to create new possibilities for matter and consciousness to explore through their eternal dance of mutual creation and discovery. But perhaps the most profound implication involves what this suggests about the future trajectory of atomic evolution. If consciousness can influence quantum field dynamics, and if quantum fields continuously create new atomic possibilities, then conscious beings might become active architects of atomic reality itself. Instead of being passive observers of predetermined physical processes, conscious beings could use their understanding of quantum field dynamics to create new forms of matter with properties that transcend anything achieved through natural evolution alone. Imagine consciousness directly interfacing with quantum vacuum fluctuations, guiding the creation of elements with custom design characteristics. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, remember this profound truth. You carry within your very being the answer to the greatest mystery in science. Every breath you take, every thought you think, every moment of wonder you experience is atoms that formed from nothing, now consciously contemplating their own impossible journey from quantum void to cosmic awareness. The story isn't ending, it's just beginning. Those ancient atoms forged in stellar cores are now writing the next chapter of cosmic evolution through your consciousness, your choices, your dreams of what the universe might become. Sweet dreams, fellow Stardust. Tomorrow awaits new revelations about the magnificent cosmos we call home, about the magnificent cosmos we call home.